Cindy.
Hi, how are you?
Good, and welcome to you. Excited to be picking your brain today about child abuse prevention. And I have to tell you that I don't think I've ever done an interview about abuse prevention before.
Great. Well, I'm happy to be here.
Oh, and this has been a passion of yours. You've been actually being an advocate for children and women for 30 years. How did you ever get going with that?
Well, I was through a lot. I went through a lot in my childhood. I was abused. And
Hmm.
so as I grew in my relationship with the Lord and became healed, it was just a passion to help women heal and to also protect children. So I've done a lot with that throughout the years.
Yeah. So, and like abuse, do you only include like a sexual abuse in there or a physical? What do you include in that word abuse?
Well, my book and some of the things I've done lately is more geared towards and focused on sexual child abuse, but definitely any abuse I have spoken to before. And I do some training with adults around that, around all abuse.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. And you actually have come up with something called the X Zone Body Safety Program. Tell us
Yeah.
what that is.
Well, it's a concept that you can teach very young children that basically anywhere that on your body you can make an X with your arms against like their chest or against your hips is a private part of your body. So it's a physical
Hmm.
movement that children can do, which should help them remember that the private part of your body is not a place anyone should ever be allowed to touch, and that they
Oh,
have that
really cool.
empowerment to say that's my exen, that's my private part of my body, and you do not touch me there. So that is kind of the concept
It's
about the exen.
it's really an easy visual. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
and it's
X.
also a physical like boundary
Yeah.
that you can teach children. So
Huh. That is amazing. And you have a book that is just out, Isabella's Treasure. Tell us about that.
yeah, that came about when I was looking for a book for my grandchild, my granddaughter,
Hmm.
and I couldn't find one that I really liked. So I decided to write about Isabel is a fairy and she teaches Nellie, and then Nellie comes across Ollie who's been hurt. So Nellie teaches Ollie what she's learned, and of course she's learned about this X zone and how to say no and tell someone if it's happened, and so there's four basic rules within the story, and it's repeated three times to really help children remember and understand. And the book also asks them to say, "Who could you tell if you were hurt?" So it's a very interactive book, and then there's some other pieces that go along with it. But it's hopefully a concept that will catch on and help preschoolers and kindergartners be protected. Because I feel the younger you start with a child, the more they're going to remember it, the more you're going to empower them to
Hmm.
stand up for their own body.
Hmm. That's so good. And this is a illustrated book for preschoolers and kindergartners are up through how old? How old do you think?
About 6 years old,
About
yeah.
6 years old.
It may
Yeah.
be expanded someday to older kids, but that's where I felt a passion to start.
Yeah. In your first book, I'm looking for the title of it here and I can't see it. Help me with the name of it.
Whispered Truth.
Whispered Truth. Yeah.
Whispered Truth.
And that was a nonfiction book written about a true story.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I decided to take some experiences in my life and write it as a novel. I felt it would be
Mm.
more, interactive with the person reading it, and help them see what God did in the middle of a lot of trials in my own life, and
Yeah.
how He walked me through them and got me to a healed place. And it's just people have really enjoyed the book and read it. It's just a quick read, and they really have gotten a lot out of it. So I'm blessed, and I actually just completed a Bible study to go along with the book.
Oh, wow. A
Yep.
Bible study to go along with the fiction book. That's pretty cool.
Novel. It's a little
Why
novel.
not? It's
A little
novel.
different.
That's awesome. And you also do Christian speaking. Of course, you speak at conferences
Yes.
and retreats and things like that. Now,
Yes.
your book that the whispering hope, that
Whisper truth. Yeah.
truth,
Yeah.
that book, is that available on Amazon or just from your website?
Yeah, Whisper Truth and Isabellas Treasure are both available on Amazon, but you can also get them from me too. And especially with Isabellas Treasure, I've got Jules and a coloring book and a CD with a song
Okay,
that all
good,
helps layer that concept, so they can get it
good.
through me. Yeah, and the song that goes with Isabella's Treasure is really entertaining. Everyone loves it. The beat's real upbeat, so I think that will help children remember the concept of the extant also.
One of your bylines is that you bring humor and story to a topic that people hate talking about.
Yeah, I try to. Yeah, I certainly do. So, yeah, in Whispered Truth, there's some different funny scenes that happen to kind of break up the tension. And then also in Isabella's Treasure, little Ollie makes some noises that kids would laugh at, like burping. So again, I tried to weave in a little humor that might not be
Yeah,
necessarily humorous to the adult, but definitely to the child.
to the
So,
kids division.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it is
So,
a tough topic. So.
how did you progress through your own pain to the point where you could become an advocate?
Oh, I spent a lot of time fasting and praying and
Mm,
listening to the Lord and journaling, and He just gave me so much truth that helped me
yeah.
forgive, that broke off the chains of just depression and darkness and feeling like I was worthless and I couldn't change. I couldn't, I was stuck. But the Lord really got me to a healed place where I can
Mm,
talk about any of it now and I don't fall apart. I don't cry because I'm healed. And He wants all of us to get to that place where it
yeah.
doesn't affect us and He can move through us to help others heal. So.
Right. It's the difference between an open wound and a scar.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Huh.
it's obviously still there, and I still remember it, but it
Sure.
definitely is a healed scar that really shows me, like Jesus's wounds on the cross, and even after the cross, he still had wounds that showed.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that, like that was proof that Jesus suffered for us, and it's
Yes.
kind of like proof that God has healed my wounds. So it's
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So, do you have a favorite theme verse or key verse for life?
Um, well, I love through all things, through Christ, all things are possible. Definitely is one, and I try to concentrate on the one that says, whatever is noble, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, think on those things because if I just think about the work I'm doing every day and what is happening to children, it can just send you over
Right.
the cliff. So I have to really concentrate on what God is doing and what He wants to do to protect children
Yeah,
and not necessarily what is happening to them. So.
right. So, what is one of the best things that you've seen lately, as far as thinking about abused children?
Well, I'm excited that more people are talking about it. I feel
Mm,
like
yeah.
through Facebook and some other social media ways, people are hearing more stories. They're becoming more outraged. And
Yeah.
a hashtag I use all the time is stop abuse, keep talking. Because we have
Mm,
got to talk about it. We've got to get to the place where adults aren't afraid to talk about it and they will talk about it with their children, which I find is still very hard. So many parents feel like if they just, if they have enough control over their child, they won't be abused. And that just isn't
oh,
the truth
right.
because perpetrators are so manipulative and they're the ones that gain your trust. And, you think, oh, well, they just want to play with Johnny out in the woods. What's wrong with that? But if a adult has wants to spend a lot of time with the child alone, there's a reason. And so I just try to really encourage people to look for those red flags, to be aware of them, and to not be afraid to ask children the right questions to find out if something is going on. And to really give children, we give them the knowledge of stop, drop, and roll if there's a fire.
Yes.
Look both ways before you cross the street, but we won't talk to them about how to protect their own.
Mm,
And I just think it's such a
mm,
disservice. Even in schools, we talk about They're trained what to do if there's a shooter. I mean, that is scary. That is all scary stuff. But children don't get that
Right.
information and say, "Oh my God, there's going to be a shooter at school." They don't. They don't do that. So they don't do that with abuse. You give them the information like anything else,
Interesting.
and they're just like, "Hey, that's great. Okay," and so,
Ah,
and it's really going to
it's
protect
yeah, that's real interesting that we have trained them about everything else. But I mean, it's something we don't want to think about or talk about.
them. Exactly. Yeah, people just but they're opening up. They're starting to talk about it, and it just makes me really excited.
So, what is the first thing a parent should do if they find that their child possibly has been abused?
Well, you've got to report it to the authorities, and I even tell people, if in your state, the Child Protective Services maybe doesn't have a good reputation, you can always call the police, and the
Mm,
police are gonna sometimes be better investigators, or they're gonna work with the Child Protective Agency maybe to make sure it is investigated and looked at. But I've also told parents with the tools we have nowadays, take pictures, record what the child's saying. You always want to ask
oh,
open-ended
that's a good idea.
questions. You don't want to ask yes and no questions, but trying to, what was it like being with that person or being at their house? What kind of activities did you do? You want to really get into what was happening, and the child will usually disclose. And then you want to really use eye contact. If parents would listen to their children, even when they're talking about the red crayon they use today, and they would just show, I'm not saying they don't, but the most important thing you can do with your child is show interest in anything they're talking about.
Right.
And then when the tough stuff comes up, they will come tell you because they know you're a listener and you're going to listen to what they have to say.
Mm,
So you just
mm,
want to make communication so open that they will come tell you anything.
mm.
And
And what is the first thing you would say to a child who has been potentially abused?
Thank you for telling me. I believe you. I'm
Mm.
here for you. I love you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Do you ever use,
And we're going to keep you safe. Yeah.
yeah, do you ever use words like it's not your fault or,
Oh, yes, definitely.
yeah.
Actually, at the back of my book, I have a heart word that says those things, what to say to an abused child or an
Mm,
adult. And
hmm.
it's not your fault.
Yeah. And then a lot of us come upon a woman who is well into her adult years and has never really completely healed from her childhood abuse. And we often find her difficult to get close to because she's still pushing people away and hiding behind walls of security that she's built up to protect herself. Well, how do you break through those walls?
Well, I think again, you just become a listening ear, and maybe I think it's helpful sometimes when you share a little bit of your story
Yeah.
and maybe what God did and what God can do. And then I think that can open people up. And especially if you build a relationship to a point where you can pray with them. Um, but really, again, they need to hear the words, "It was not your fault." And the worst thing you can do is say, "Well, you need to forgive that person," because
Hmm. Hmm.
forgiveness is a process. So you really want to listen to them first, show them love, give them love and support in any way you can,
Hmm.
and then gradually say, it seems like you might be stuck, and if you could work towards forgiving that person.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of my Bible study in one chapter
Hmm.
is how to do that, because I think it can be a cliche. Well, just forgive them, you'll be fine. And that, if you haven't been
Yeah.
through it, it's just a process, and it
Right.
needs to happen slowly, and it needs to happen with God leading them.
Yeah.
So,
And forgiveness is one of the pieces. One of the pieces. The way that you said it right there, you said make sure to don't just say that right out. It's like, don't try to be the Holy Spirit. Don't try to be the doctor. Just
yeah.
come along and be a friend and let the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit do his thing. I love them.
To get unstuck, forgiveness is definitely a
Right.
huge, huge part of it,
Right.
but it's just not the first step usually. That that
Yeah.
isn't really going to help people
Hmm.
if they think that's all they have to do is forgive, and that takes care
Yeah.
of it.
Uh, Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Cindy, for being here with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. This was great.
Okay, and you guys can learn more about Cindy at womenspeakers.com under Cincinnati, Ohio. Otherwise, her website is livinghopefortoday.org, livinghopefortoday.org. And you can learn more about her speaking ministry, as well as her books and her resources over there. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.